This is Sam Tolbert, the instructor for this part of the course. We're in our Hammond organ mode. We'll be covering piano. Now, if you've gotten on our lesson pages, we have our write-up for the preacher chords. We have basic and we have advanced. We're going to cover some of those chords and the sequence in which you use them. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a preacher here because that makes it a little more easier to know when to use those chords. So we're just going to use a very generic base for our chords right now. Now, generally, when a preacher is preaching, you are listening to, first of all, where they're going musically. Not every preacher preaches in the same key. I should say a minister of the gospel in the spoken word. They have their own pitch, their own technique, their own style. If you're playing for your local pastor or your local evangelist, then you would have gotten an idea where they are and when they want you to join in with them musically, because you are accompanying them when they're preaching. You're not running before them. You're not overstepping them, as I have described that in my text dealing with praying for preacher chords. So you always want to get that first an idea where they are. Now let's say we're down in the key of C. That's where we'll start right there. Now for the organist, a lot of you like to play, and I'll even set up my keyboard, my simulator having like this. You like to play full. You have just choked out whoever's preaching, because you have so many tones against their one vocal tone. You've just choked out. They're now competing, and I think I covered this in my session. They're now competing with you for their tone. So I like to suggest that for you organist players, you back off on pulling every drawbar out until it's necessary. I recommend a setting, and you can write these down. I'm going to post this on this video. I recommend a setting of starting from left to right, 7, 4, 7, 5, 2, 5, 0, 4, 4. Now again, this is an electronic, I should say a computer synthesized organ, so it's going to sound as pure as it can because it's electronic. Yours may sound different. But this way you don't have so many tones competing with the person who is ministering in the spoken word, and now you're accompanying with them. On your bass pedals, I would say, and again, what brings out preacher chords really well is a good bottom, which is done through your bass. So you can have a 16th and perhaps the next note, the second drawbar, at around 5. So 8 and 5 is good compared with the settings which we have just given you right there. And again, depending upon how that person ministers, that determines how much music you're going to accompany them with. So you have your basic chords, which are sevenths. You'll find this is on my preacher chord page. I may have it like this. It could be a seventh, or it could be that in here, or it could be here. What I like to do is, depend upon, as I've gauged from where they're going musically, where they're going, you give them the bottom. Now you give them that first climb, where you're now going from the C to the E on the bass. And I'm going to resolve to that 4. Now, you may be there a while depending upon where there's preaching. So it may be, and you might be there a while, so you give them a little run. And now, as the person is ministering, you're listening to where their tone is. And see all the different changes you have in that run. Then resolve to the diminished, and then come out. Now there you see me doing, it's an F9, and now here you're back to your beginning chord, which is that 7th chord. Now again, it depends upon how the person is ministering, but I think you can hopefully satisfy a preacher with less chords as possible. No need going all. But stay within a realm where they can get comfortable with you, and then you can get comfortable with them, and then you can branch out. So you give them that as they're preaching. Let them breathe and speak. Let them breathe, speak. Let them breathe, speak. Of course, give them that. The audience loves that. The other changes to, and hold that one note. Trill. So the idea is to accompany person ministering, and you gauge where they're going. If they're staying in one key, then you stay right there with them. And you find all the runs, all the chord patterns that fit just staying in one note. And you practice this. Just hold them right there. If they begin to come up, now you hold them right there on the bass until you hear them chain. And most times you will hear that chain. And those key changes are, if they're in C, you hear them hit that B flat, which means they're going to resolve down to that F. And then you hear them climb. Yes, when you hear them do that climb, I'll cover that climb again. There's your first chord, there's your second chord, there's your third chord, and then resolve back to the first chord. But you're holding a G. Sometimes you gotta really catch it. So the preacher chord, and we're going to cover some more lessons, not just in, this is not the only one, but the idea is to try to accompany the preacher, not give them so much drawbars all out full, give them a nice setting so that they have space for their tone to maneuver around what's happening, and then of course you can throw your runs in there in between the preacher or the person ministering taking a breath. Now some take the breath in half a second. Some have a chance to skip their line out, turn a little bit and take their breath. So that's when you're monitoring, you are watching, you are gauging where they are, and you're also helping them out. Sometimes they'll get a full line out, 2 lines out maybe in a span of 3.5 seconds. They need 5 to 10 seconds to catch their breath. That's when you can now they're back. You've gotten out and you've filled that gap of space. One of the worst things you want to have in any kind of service is dead air. If you know anything about radio broadcasting, they never, if you ever listen to a radio program, you'll never hear, unless it's a mistake, any dead space. Because it's like everybody now is in pause and wondering what's happening. As a musician, you're now aware of any dead space that may come, depending upon, it may not just be in the preaching part. If it's just someone's doing the announcements and they're fumbling through papers, you don't want dead space. Have something going on in the background. Of course, now you won't be doing that during announcements, but you get the cue. You're helping to keep the service at one level, and as the levels climb, you climb with it. One of the key things a lot of musicians are learning now, especially the newer musicians, is when the person ministering changes key. How do you tell when they're going to change key? We'll cover that in our next lesson.